There's something different about people whose swimming pools were closed for polio. In a world where summer means freedom and water activities are taken for granted, these individuals experienced the most psychologically complex relationship between seasons, recreation, and invisible danger in modern history, and it shaped their psychology in ways that created the most cautious, yet resilient, summer-conscious generation ever to exist. Let's start with something that sounds like a nightmare to modern children. Picture yourself at 9 years old on the first hot day of June in 1952. You wake up excited because summer has finally arrived, and you're planning to spend the day at the community pool with your friends. But when you get dressed and run downstairs for breakfast, your mother has terrible news. The pool is closed, honey. There are 3 new polio cases in town, and the health department shut down all the swimming areas until further notice. Just like that, summer was cancelled. Not delayed, not modified, but completely cancelled. The thing you'd been looking forward to for months, the activity that defined what summer meant to a 9, was suddenly off limits because of an invisible enemy that could be lurking in the water waiting to steal your ability to walk or breathe. Think about what happened to your developing brain during those pool closure announcements. Every summer of your childhood became a negotiation between desire and danger. Every hot day became a reminder that the things you wanted most could also be the things that hurt you most. You were learning that pleasure and risk often come together in ways that adults always protect you from. But here's what made this experience psychologically profound. The pool closures weren't random or arbitrary. They were based on real medical knowledge about how polio spread through contaminated water. You were learning that sometimes adults have to make decisions that disappoint children in order to keep children safe. That protection sometimes requires sacrifice, even when the sacrifice feels unfair. Your parents would try to explain while you stood at the kitchen window, staring at the beautiful summer day that you couldn't fully enjoy. Polio spreads where lots of children play together, especially in warm water where the virus can survive. The pool isn't dangerous by itself, but when children from different neighborhoods all swim together, that's how the sickness moves from one family to another. This created what public health psychologists call invisible threat awareness. Unlike dangers you can see coming, like storms or wild animals, polio taught you that some of the biggest threats to your well-being are completely invisible until they've already affected you. You learned to take seriously dangers that couldn't be detected by your own senses. But there's something deeper happening here. The pool closures taught you about collective responsibility in ways that shaped your understanding of community and individual behavior. Your family wasn't just avoiding the pool to protect you. They were avoiding the pool to protect everyone else's children too. You learn that when public health is at stake, individual desires become less important than community safety. That sometimes the right thing to do is give up something you really want because other people depend on your good judgment. That being part of a community means accepting restrictions that serve the greater good. Now imagine standing outside the chain-link fence around your neighborhood pool, watching the empty concrete rectangle fill with leaves instead of children. The diving board sits unused. The lifeguard chairs are stacked in storage. What should be the center of summer activity has become a monument to missing fun. But you also notice something else. Other children are standing at the same fence, looking at the same empty pool. Everyone is disappointed. Everyone is missing the same experience. This isn't just happening to your family. This is happening to every family in every neighborhood where pools have been closed for polio prevention. This developed what sociologists call collective sacrifice psychology. You learn that when everyone gives up the same thing for the same reason, the sacrifice feels less like punishment and more like shared responsibility. That community-wide restrictions are easier to accept than individual restrictions because everyone is making the same compromise. The pool closures also taught you about uncertainty and patience in ways that no other childhood experience could. Nobody knew exactly how long the closures would last. The health department would evaluate the situation week by week, based on new cases reported and medical advice from state officials. Summer could end before the pools reopened, or they might reopen next week if no new cases appeared. This created what psychological researchers call indefinite waiting tolerance. You learned to live with not knowing when something you wanted would become available again. You developed patience with uncertain timelines and acceptance that some decisions are beyond your control or your family's control. But perhaps, most importantly, the pool closures taught you to find alternative sources of summer joy when your first choice was unavailable. You couldn't go swimming, but you could run through sprinklers in your backyard. You couldn't go to the community pool, but you could have water balloon fights with neighborhood friends in your own yard. You couldn't dive off the high board, but you could create your own adventures with garden hoses and inflatable pools. This developed what creativity psychologists call recreational adaptation intelligence. Instead of becoming depressed when your preferred activities were restricted, you learned to identify substitute activities that provided similar satisfaction. Instead of focusing on what you couldn't do, you became expert at discovering what you could do. The summer pool closures also created powerful lessons about seasonal psychology and the relationship between time, weather, and emotional well-being. Summer wasn't just hot weather anymore. Summer became a season of potential loss, where the activities you loved most could be taken away without warning based on invisible community health threats. You learned that seasons carry emotional risks as well as emotional benefits, that the anticipation of summer fun could turn into the disappointment of summer restrictions, that weather and health and community decisions all intersect in ways that affect how you experience time and place. This created what environmental psychologists call conditional seasonal optimism. Instead of assuming that good weather automatically means good experiences, you learned to appreciate summer activities while you had access to them. You never took swimming for granted again because you understood it could be restricted at any time for reasons beyond anyone's immediate control. Years passed. The polio vaccine was developed. Pool closures became unnecessary as vaccination rates increased and polio cases disappeared. But something from those empty swimming pool summers stayed with you forever. An understanding that public health requires individual sacrifice, that recreation is a privilege rather than a guarantee, and that summer fun depends on community safety. Decades later, when public health emergencies require temporary closures of recreational facilities, you understand the reasoning in ways that younger generations often struggle with. You've lived through the experience of giving up something you love for the protection of people you'll never meet. You know that collective sacrifice for invisible threats isn't government overreach, it's community responsibility. Now imagine trying to explain to your grandchildren what it was like when swimming pools closed for medical reasons. How empty pools in summer weren't just disappointing, they were evidence that adults took children's health seriously enough to disappoint them. How learning to find alternative summer fun wasn't settling for less, it was developing resilience and creativity. This isn't nostalgia for more restricted childhoods. This is recognition of a fundamentally different relationship with public health, community responsibility, and recreational gratitude. You learn that the activities you enjoy most become more precious when you understand they can be taken away for everyone's protection. When modern communities face public health restrictions on recreational activities, you carry wisdom that could help others understand. You know that temporary disappointment serves long-term safety. That individual sacrifice for collective benefit isn't punishment, it's citizenship. Your closed swimming pool summers taught you that community membership comes with responsibilities as well as privileges. That public health decisions affect everyone equally when they're made for everyone's protection. That learning to adapt to restrictions makes you more resilient, not more restricted. But perhaps most importantly, those empty pools taught you to never take summer fun for granted. Every day you can swim safely is a day to be grateful for community health, medical knowledge, and the collective choices that make recreation possible for everyone. Those summers watching empty swimming pools weren't just missed fun. They were masterclasses in community responsibility, public health understanding, and recreational resilience that shaped how you think about collective well-being for the rest of your life. Drop a comment and share your pool closure memory. Do you remember summers when pools were closed for polio? How did your family find other ways to stay cool? What did you learn about community responsibility and public health? And if this resonated with you, hit like and subscribe because we dive deep into the psychology that explains how your unique summer experiences shaped the remarkable community consciousness and resilience you carry today. See you next time.